Fleetwood-Hession.
Thanks, babe. Good evening. I remember a night 10 years ago so vividly it feels like yesterday. It was one of those mornings when you were rushing through the house trying to get everything you needed to get out the door. And I can remember things like the sound of my high heels clumping across the hardwood as I dashed from room to room looking for the things that I needed to get out the door that day. And I can remember thinking, how can I be this stressed? The day hasn't even started yet. And as I got to the kitchen counter, I threw my laptop in my bag, and I looked over at then 15-year-old Cameron, my son, who was playing for you tonight. Yeah, damn straight. Paid a lot of money for those music lessons. I remember looking at Cameron, and he said, "Mom, you know, I really appreciate all that you do. I appreciate how hard you work." And he said, "I know that because you work so hard, that we are able to have this beautiful home and so many great things that other people don't get. So I want you to know that I am really, really grateful. But," he said, "I have watched you, and I don't think I want to work that hard." He said, I don't know if I want the kind of life that I've watched you live for us." And it was in that moment that I just stood trying to take on this information like this foreign idea. Could you have all the great things that we had in our lives and not live this frenetic, stressed pace? Because that's all I knew. That's what I thought success was. And we want our kids to have what they want in their lives, right? So it was this moment of, oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't have to choose one or the other. And then off we darted for the day, late as usual. But as luck would have it, just a few months later, in 2014, I was afforded the opportunity to spend 2 entire months so sick with pneumonia that I couldn't leave my house except to go to the doctor to contemplate that conversation with Cameron. And it was in those moments that I realized something had to give. Because the frenetic pace had landed me in this place of sickness and the mountains of personal stress that I wasn't dealing with. And so I had this opportunity to, in forced reflection, to really think about who I was and what I wanted for my life. And it was in that time that I knew I needed transformation. I needed desperately to move from striving to thriving. And so throughout that time, I was able to do just that. And from that experience, I wrote a book that I published last year that became a bestseller. Thank you for buying the book and making it a bestseller. And ultimately started a business to help other leaders and companies move from striving to thriving. And in that business that I've started, it was very important to me to have this really simple but profound model to work everything from. And it's called Business is Human. And it goes like this. Our business needs to control, measure, and optimize. The money-making model, the goals, the strategies, all of that is great business practice. But our human needs are very different. Our human needs are personal, emotional, and social. And in order to thrive, we have to bring our business needs and our, I can't use my hands with the microphone. We have to bring our business needs and our human needs together. But the most important aspect of that is that our human needs come first. And so tonight, a very special part of my business is dedicated to career women that we fondly call the Badass Women's Council. So it's the Badass Women's Council that we invite you tonight to our 4th annual Stand Tall in Your Story event in celebration of International Women's Day. I'm going to need a drink of water in a second. Human needs, remember? Could you take the lid off? I can only do one thing at a time. Human needs, hydration. Okay. I can come back, I think. So our human needs have to come first. Where was I? Badass Women's Council welcomes you to our 4th annual Stand Tall in Your Story. And before I bring the ladies out tonight that are going to speak to you, who they have been in an experience called Rise and Thrive, a 7-month experience where they've had the opportunity to do reflection the right way, not in the way that you're forced to when you become ill. They have had the opportunity to really ask themselves, what are their human needs? What do they want for their careers? And I can't wait for them to come out and share their very human stories. Because tonight, we're not talking about our achievements in business. We're going to share the human part of our lives and our careers with the intent of inspiring you into these types of conversations. In fact, you're going to get the opportunity to have some conversations at your tables tonight and share with us up on stage. You are as much a star of this show as our speakers are tonight. But before we do that, I want to take just a moment and I want to give a little bit of the evolution of work and career and how we got to this place where burnout is so prevalent, and what are the things that we desperately need to do differently if we're going to break ourselves out of these things. So I'm gonna do a timeline. We're gonna have like a little history lesson here. I'm gonna use the stage as a timeline, all right? So I told you that in 2014, here I was, 2 months of pneumonia, completely just done, exhausted. Started my business in 2017. And in 2019, the World Health Organization published a report on burnout. They called it an occupational phenomenon, characterized by 3 things. 1, exhaustion, that a nap and more sleep just wouldn't help. No more desire for professional efficacy, as I think they've called it, which basically meant you just had no more suck it up to give. And people were becoming cynical. And I read this report and I thought, isn't that what I had in 2014? This shit ain't new. And I dug into the report and I found it absolutely fascinating. In fact, did you know that I want you to guess. What year do you think the very first report on burnout was published? I want you to turn to the person next to you. I want to say, my God, you look amazing tonight. I'm glad you're here. And then guess what year you think the first report on burnout came. Ready, go. Okay. What do you think? What was the first year that a report on burnout was published? What was it? 86. 98. Sold. No, just kidding. Wrong. 1974. Y'all, I was 8 years old with braces and bangs. I think it was not good. We have had burnout in our society since 1974. It was a German-American psychologist named Herbert Friedenberger, and he and his buddies were just hanging around the office one day talking that they were feeling some kind of way. And they described it when they were talking to each other as burnout. And like any good psychologist does, he thought, I wonder if other people feel like us. And so he went out and did a study. And lo and behold, he discovered absolutely people were feeling the same way. He described it as excessive demands on energy, strength, and resources. Our human resources. And so this was wonderful for me, because when there's a diagnosis of burnout and you've just started a company, that it gave great marketing for me, right? And so my company is here to ban burnout, build community, and boost business. But it also verified the hypothesis that I wrote about in my book, that burnout actually began in the 1900s. What I believe happened is when we moved from the agricultural society into the industrial age model of work is when the root of burnout began. Because in the agricultural society, everybody was outside working hard. You knew exactly how your work mattered to the community. You were all in it together for survival. And you had to rely on immense amounts of faith because you were faced with uncertainty every single day with the weather and are locusts going to eat the crops. You just never knew if you were going to make it. And the industrialists came along and they said, hey, we've got an idea. Why don't you just get in out of those elements, get in out of the weather, come into the factory, and you don't have to worry about the weather and all of that. We're going to pay you every single week. And people went, cool. And so everybody moved into the factory. Well, guess what a factory is designed to do? Control, measure, and optimize. So this is where the model of business began. And every single time there's an advancement in technology and the mechanics, it all went to serve the business and the economy. And we had huge uptick in our economy. But we lost some of our human connection and our human needs, and we never, ever went back to it. Every time there was an advancement, oh, great, electricity, cool, we don't have to stop working at night. We'll pay you more for third shift. Oh, great, technology, you can work from the beach. It's going to give you more flexibility. But we didn't, unless we were on vacation working from the beach. And every single time advancement came along, we just worked harder. And so I believe it was then that we got on this kind of proverbial treadmill. And every so many years, we just push the speed faster and the incline up. And it's just not sustainable. So you take us back here to 2019 when the Burnout Report comes out. What the World Health Organization had that our friend Friedenberger didn't have was Google. So it went viral, right? It was on the cover of every magazine. It was all over LinkedIn. Everybody was talking about it. It was a big deal. Poor Friedenberger, he died before he knew he went viral. He died in like 99 or something. Sorry, dude. So here we are, 2019, barely touching on this burnout thing, and then boom, 2020 hits. And for the first time, collectively and globally, the treadmill stopped. And all of us stopped. And it was in that moment where we had forced reflection time. And we had the opportunity to ponder, is this really all there is to life? And it was a traumatic response, not just because of what was going on in the world, but because it had so disrupted our lives and the control that we thought we had on our lives. Because we may ignore our human needs, but our bodies and our brains are always responding to what's going on around us. So we had a very human response, a traumatic response. Psychology 101, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So the first response was the flight response. 2021, the Great Resignation. 47 million people left the workforce. A lot of them women, because they were trying to run on the treadmill, teach school, and fix dinner once in a while. I said, nope, I'm out. The next response was the freeze response, which was quiet quitting. And people said, you know what? I don't have the luxury of not having a paycheck, but I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to pull my speed back and my incline down on my treadmill, and I'm just going to do what I'm paid for. Which left us then the next year for the fawn response, which are the people that are so dedicated and people-pleasing that there's no way they're going to stop running on that treadmill no matter what. And now they've got the responsibility of their work, the 47 million people that left, and the rest of the work that the quiet quitters used to do. You're laughing because you think that might be you. We know how that ends, not well. And then we go to the managers and leaders, and we can't be too hard on them, but they went into the fight response. And they said, you know what? Get back to the office. If I can't see you, how do I know you're working? I'm going to have to put email trackers on to see if you're working, because all we've ever known is control, measure, optimize. And we're in this moment in time where we have some critical decisions to make in 2023. And what we want to inspire you with tonight is the understanding that we can either go back and try to knit together some of this stuff that just hasn't been working ever, or we can decide to do it very differently moving into the future with what I call the age of humanity versus the industrial age model of work and the treadmill. And so what we want to do tonight is talk to you about these very human stories. We're not going to talk about the business side of things, because what we have learned is if you move from striving to thriving, you can have meaning and money. You can have peace, purpose, and prosperity. You, in fact, do not have to trade one for the other. So tonight, as we further our movement into the age of humanity, we're inviting all of you to join us in this movement of doing life and work very differently and to be inspired by these women's stories. I want to take a moment and call out to our Rise and Thrive alums that are in the house tonight. I love you, ladies. These are the women who have already started the age of humanity. They have already started this movement to work and lead differently, and we're going to hear from some of them tonight. And wouldn't it be better if they all joined us in this movement too, y'all? Like, don't we need them with us? Because sometimes swimming upstream against these old patterns of control, measure, optimize are really difficult. But we would love for you to join us.